Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Level Agency's Test, Learn, Grow podcast. I'm your host for today, Dale Reether, digital marketing lead here at Level. Today, I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, Jenna Bluedorn, who leads our direct-to-consumer performance marketing team here at the agency. She is also the adjunct faculty and executive in residence for digital marketing at the University of Pittsburgh. Jenna, did I get that one right?
You did.
Awesome. And finally, as if her first two titles weren't impressive enough, Jenna is a PhD candidate at Indiana University of Pennsylvania in Media and Communication Studies. Her research focuses on emerging social media and its impact on brand development and engagement. So it's only fitting that we have Jenna on today to talk about the video content trends that we're seeing across social, specifically the shift in popularity that we've seen to user-generated content over the past couple of years. And with that, I'd love to welcome in Jenna. How's it going, Jenna? Super appreciate you taking the time to join us again today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this.
I'm excited to listen to it. I haven't got a lot of opportunity to hear what you're studying at IUP. So I'd love to start today just hearing a bit more about the research that you're doing focused on emerging social media platforms. How did you get into that? Tell us a little bit more about that and what you've been learning recently.
Yeah, so one thing that they say, in the academic community, when you're doing research like this, especially dissertation research, is you either have to really love it or really hate whatever the topic is. So it's either something that you're super passionate about or something that you're really against and you want to create a solution for. And for me, I was really interested in TikTok specifically because I'm a TikTok user. I love the platform. I think it's super fun and it's different than what we've seen in the past. We've never really seen that recommendation engine, video only, not based on really your following, but just based on an algorithm. And now, of course, there's now Reels and there's Facebook Shorts and there's YouTube and there's all those things that have followed, but TikTok was really the first one. So I loved seeing that innovation in social media. It was really a big change up in what we were doing. So I decided that I wanted to focus my research there. So everything I've done to date in my doctoral candidacy has been focused on TikTok. Now I'm really looking at how brands specifically use humor as a mechanism on TikTok and the type of content that they release to be able to connect more with their target audiences and make that more lasting impression. Part of that being UGC.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It makes so much sense when you say everything has kind of stemmed from TikTok, right? It's almost one of the first times that I've seen in social that the same type of video content format works on almost any platform, and the platforms are adjusting to have that type of format be a big part of their platform and their feeds, like you mentioned with YouTube Shorts and Reels. That wasn't a thing before TikTok came around and kind of sparked it. And even whenever you're looking at streaming TV ads or LinkedIn videos, the vertical video format is working everywhere, and it's almost what people have come to expect and want to see on, regardless of what platform they're on. Can you talk
Do you remember back in the day when we used to create creative and it would be horizontal video only, in-feed video, and there was no vertical creation?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That was the thing. And that was not even 3 years ago, maybe?
Yeah. But before 2020, it was really that I think it was a 9x9 square that we did, very in-feed scrolling video type, or it was that longer horizontal. And now it's just prioritize story placements, prioritize reel placements, anything vertical, because people are really, we always say mobile first in marketing, but people really are almost, I don't want to say mobile only, but they're definitely very mobile first.
Yeah. And I think another interesting part of that is 3 years ago, whenever we were trying to fit it exactly to the dimensions of this is going to be square and it's going to fit the feet perfectly, I think the level of things needing to be polished, that expectation is lower than it used to be. Now I think it's totally acceptable and people are fine with seeing a vertical video, even if the sides are completely blurred out. I
see a lot of that from national brands. Now, this is just my user experience, but I see a lot of, hey, this vertical video is what's going to resonate with the audience, and we're prioritizing mobile placement, but we know we're going to run in feed, so we have some of that hangover there on the sides where you have that blurring. But I think, as a marketer and an advertiser, I'd prefer to have two video formats, one that's optimized for feed placements, one that's optimized for like story and reel placements. But if you can't do that and you only have that user generated or just general vertical, like first person video type, see what happens. I mean, at least test it and see if it resonates with your audience.
Sure. And one thing that I'm remembering that we didn't do at the beginning of this that we might want to just state the union is, for people that don't know at this point, what is user generated content?
Yeah, no, that's probably good to set the stage. So if you don't know, user generated content is just any content that's made by your consumer, your customer, or like influencer, for example, that you hire, but it's very first person. It's shot in a quick and dirty way on a phone. It is vertical mostly. A lot of times, you used to see this in e-commerce. There was product reviews and people would get a take-home little box or something, and then they would rate it and they talk about it. And for e-commerce, that made perfect sense because you have a physical product, you can review it, you can post it online, comes all full circle. But more and more, you've seen this in other industries. Like I've seen it in B2B, where people are talking about services and people are talking about high value purchases and things that, high tier decision makers are doing, like CMOs and CEOs and CFOs. You wouldn't really think user generated content for them. But when you think about consumer behavior and you think about meeting your audience where they are, your CEOs and your CMOs and your CFOs are on these types of platforms already. And I know a lot of brands are like, oh no, my audience doesn't live there. Like I don't have anybody on TikTok. But it used to be that stereotype. TikTok really was just for your 18 to 24-year-olds, Gen Z only, Gen Alpha is coming up. But now, we're seeing that you're having a more wide range audience makeup. Now, is that going to be your whole audience, your only play? Absolutely not. But don't discount it right off the bat before doing your audience research to see if they do live there.
Yeah, that's a great point. You're totally right. It's not just for e-commerce brands and young people. If you go on LinkedIn right now, especially like I'm a B2B guy, I'm in all the B2B communities on LinkedIn. The companies and the brands that are getting content right now are very much leveraging user generated content. And it doesn't have to be, it's very authentic. It doesn't have to be this polished thing, but I think it allows you to do more content consistently and get more of a personal voice into your content. So I think you're right. It's big, it's huge in B2B right now. It's big everywhere. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that, okay, TikTok came out, they introduced this vertical video. Why do you think it just took the world by storm and now it's what everybody is leaning into?
There's a couple of reasons. I think one of those being trust. So when we think about advertising, people that are younger especially have grown up with advertising. It's been part of their world since they were little. They know it. They might love it. They might hate it, but they don't trust it very much. So the trust has gotten eroded because it's just so present. And so when you have that first person user generated, hey, this is my true and real opinion on this. This isn't a formatted ad. This isn't a produced TV spot. It builds that little bit of parasocial interaction. So, parasocial interaction theory really says that we feel this relationship with someone on the other side of the screen. It used to be reserved for like in the 1940s and the 1930s, like radio personalities, where like people would be, whether they were at war, they were at home, and they were just listening to the radio at night. They would build these like relationships in their heads with the people that were on the radio with them. And that translated to TV later on. And now we see that with influencers and we see that with content creators, and people feel like, hey, I have this relationship with this person. They're telling me something that they believe in and they trust. So I believe in it and I trust it. And that comes at different levels. You're not going to be as exposed to different creators, but parasocial works in different ways. So it can work in marketing by saying like, hey, here's this person that you may know or not know, but they're just like you. They're also a mom. They're also a father. They're also a parent. They're also someone who volunteers in their community, whatever your demographic is. And then you build that little bit of relationship to help you make that connection. So trust, I think, is one thing. The other thing I think is just for advertisers, it's just so much easier. The lift on designers, so much less. And it used to be, okay, so my CEO comes to me, my CMO comes to me and says, our sales team has identified that the customers face these 3 problems. And then I kick off this huge project to make all this creative to address those 3 problems. And it might take me months, sprint planning or however lean I can get it to make all this creative, to make all these assets that support these 3 problems. Then I get my budget approved, I launch it, I measure, I iterate, and that's all wonderful. But now the customer is moving so quickly, and we are seeing thousands and thousands of ads a day. I think the last study I saw said that we see up to 10,000 ads in a single day. And so as advertisers, we're able to be so much more lean. And so the CMO comes to you, says, here's the 3 problems. You, Dale, then go and you record short form user-generated content videos answering those problems. We post it to LinkedIn, very minimal editing, if any at all. And then we answer those problems in a day rather than answer them over the period of 6 weeks or whatever it might take to make that full scale. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a place for that full scale campaign, because this UGC should and can be leveraged in a full scale campaign. But for that quick response, for that quick connection with our customers, there's nothing that's faster than that.
Yeah, for sure. And just to put it, just to relate it to Level in our test, learn, grow methodology, it allows you to get to what's working way faster whenever you can get a message into market that quickly, and it's not going to damage your brand reputation now with how popular and used to people are to raw, authentic content. You can figure out, okay, we put out 10 videos last week. These 3 videos that focused on these 3 pain points resonated the most with our audience. Now let's allocate time and resources and spend to larger scale campaigns that might be more polished based on the learnings that we got from getting there faster.
For sure.
So it helps you learn and then invest in the right ways. So you're not wasting a bunch of time and money on whole scale campaigns where you don't even know if it's going to work yet.
Yeah, it's great for that small scale testing and just getting those initial results. It's also great to introduce as a challenger. If you're a brand that runs pretty evergreen campaigns that do well, you should always be thinking about, how am I going to elevate this? How am I going to test this? How am I going to make sure this has the longevity that I need it to have? Introducing a UGC challenger is a really easy way to do that. You make the UGC, you run it in platform, and know, when you start that formal A/B test, your original creative is always going to win because it needs some time to learn the new creative and it needs some time to leverage some data against that. But once it gets going, see, how does it do against the old creative? Does it do better? Is it worse? Is it the same? And then you can use those learnings to test your brand in different ways and stress test things. It's not going to be immediate all the time, but it's something where you can always have that continuing testing mentality just to make sure that you've got something out there.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to switch gears a little bit. We talked a little bit about, this is the trend, but there is a time and a place for published video. And when we were first planning this episode, I think what we originally said was the importance of investing in high quality video and UGC, which are kind of 2 opposite ends of the spectrum whenever it comes to just the level of quality. In your mind, when is the right time to invest in more polished video, something with higher production value?
I think it depends on your objective and who you're trying to reach first. So, we always start with that audience research after we have the strategic objective for our campaign. So if I'm trying to reach, just as an example, high net worth individuals, and I'm trying to sell them a product that has a really high lifetime value and a high commitment cost, I would probably be thinking about, how can I balance UGC to build trust and introduce with fully produced content to build even further that our brand is trustworthy. We have been doing this. We are the authority, because there's 2 parts of trust. There's that authority, and then there's the personal connection. So UGC hits on the personal connection, but fully produced creative hits on authority. So if you have both of those things, they can work in harmony. I don't think marketing anymore is an either or. I think it's a both type of play. And so I think if you can only have UGC to start, totally fine. But then let's move into some polished creative based on the results that we learned. And you really need to have the right creative for the right platform. So we see a lot of creative UGC style on LinkedIn. UGC style creative can be worked into fully polished OTT videos. And I actually just saw it, Southern New Hampshire University used a screen recording of a girl saying how excited she was for getting into her program, but it was built into a polished video.
Yeah.
So you're using the best of both worlds there. So these things should work and can work in harmony, but think about who your audience is and what your objective is, and make sure you're hitting on all parts of the trust spectrum, not just that personal connection, but also that authority measure.
Yeah, I think that's really smart and exactly right. I've also seen kind of a mishmash of the two. I think Small Direct Club does something similar with their OTT ads, where they have people like giving reviews and then they cut the more polished motion graphics and stuff like that. So I think at the end of the day, what you're saying is test, try things in different places, but ultimately UGC can work on almost any platform. And I think, and vice versa, polished video can work in almost any platform,
sure.
Probably except for outside TikTok, probably not as much.
No, I wouldn't say I wouldn't invest my resources in making a ton of polished video for TikTok, just because it doesn't feel like that in-feed authentic experience that degrades the trust in the platform. I've seen, and I don't have solid research data to support this, but I personally have noticed influx in official sponsor content on TikTok, especially since the TikTok shop opened, which is that in-platform shopping experience. And so I'm curious to see how that will impact users' trust with UGC, especially on TikTok. Because if you're seeing that influx of sponsored, influx of TikTok shop, that could kind of reach the breaking point of trust and value add for your consumer. I don't think we're quite there yet, but that's something that I am keeping my eye on.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, you can tell immediately if it's a polished video on TikTok that it's an ad, because it doesn't match anything else. But I think the people that are doing sponsored content advertising really well on TikTok are finding trends in a way to create videos that feel very native to the platform. I know that's something that you talked a little bit about earlier, and you alluded to humor. You want to talk a little bit about how brands should be or are leveraging, seeing the trends that are happening in TikTok? People are making videos that follow this script and use this music, yada, yada, yada. And creating and injecting their product into it in a way that doesn't feel like an ad. I'm a marketer, and so just anecdotally, I watch this stuff sometimes and I'm enjoying it. And I'm like, oh shit, wait, I'm getting advertised to right now. And I didn't even realize it for the first 15 seconds.
Yeah, the biggest thing is that the content that you're not realizing is an ad, and the content that you're resonating with and that you're interested in watching is content that you would already watch if it was just normal, authentic content. And it's also content that falls in line with that creator, that brand's voice and their reputation and their brand, who they are. The biggest mistake I see creators make is in partnering with influencers or in pushing into UGC that just doesn't feel like them. So if you're partnering with an influencer, if you're a fashion brand and you're partnering with an influencer that works in fashion, awesome. But if you're a fashion brand who sells to people who are mostly just average middle class, and you're partnering with a fashion collaborator that only talks about luxury items, that's not going to resonate with their audience because it's just not the right fit. But I see a lot of fashion influencers who style Walmart or style Target, and they're reaching to that more middle class consumer, and they're able to resonate because it feels like in-feed content that they'd already been getting. Or, for example, if you're a fine dining or you're a restaurant type of brand, anything related with food, and you're partnering with a fashion creator, that just is kind of a dissonance. It doesn't work. So making sure that you're using the right creator or you're using the right sponsor or person is really important. But then also making sure it feels like your voice. So if you are Duolingo, who's one of the brands that I'm studying, you're a very fun, educational, kind of dark humor, Gen Z humor voice, make content like that. But if you're a more serious brand, then you should be making content that is a little bit more serious. And everybody can leverage humor. Everybody can leverage things in different ways, but make sure it's true to your brand voice. It's just like if you were making a display ad, you wouldn't make it outside of colors that are in your brand guide. Don't make UGC that doesn't fit with who you are as a brand.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And what I'm hearing is people can snip out an ad from a mile away now because the people that are coming up into being consumers and the people we're selling to, not just from an e-commerce standpoint, the younger generation, but even in B2B, like we grew up with this stuff and we can tell if it's an ad pretty quickly. So match the platform, match the voice, I guess, like you just said, if you're working with an influencer, and aim to entertain, especially on a platform like TikTok. I think I've even seen it on LinkedIn and B2B, like people are developing like mini shows and stuff like that that are very like UGC created. They're raw, but they're funny and they're entertaining, and like you watch it because it's actually fun to watch, but it's still getting their brand across and their point across at the same time. So I think it's time for people to get really creative in the way they're thinking about this type of stuff.
Yeah, and all content, you're watching it, like you're talking about, it's making you laugh. It's adding value to you because it's funny and it's entertaining and you're having a good time watching it. Even if you're a B2B brand, you're adding value by being entertaining. Alternatively, you could add value by being educational. If I'm someone who's looking for a software and I don't really have the time to watch a whole hour-long demo, and you're just showing me the main 3 points that are going to make me go, wow, like I need that in my life. And you're doing that in UGC, that's adding value to me by educating me in a different format that might resonate more with me. Or instead of like doing a demo, maybe you're talking about like major objections that can also educate me. Don't make it super pitchy. Don't make it super salesy. Make it feel real, but make sure that you're deciding, how am I adding value to my consumer while I'm putting this out on the internet?
Yeah, for sure. Have you seen any brands that are doing this really well, or really good examples that you've seen lately that you want to shout out?
I should have written these down because I figured you were going to ask. So when I am scrolling, the best ones that I'm seeing are fashion. Like any e-commerce platforms, like they're doing a really good job of partnering with the right creators and finding people that fit. So one that I saw, I think her handle is Little Red Fashion Hood. She's an Amazon partner, and so she has an Amazon storefront, and her entire feed is just about mid-size fashion for your average like middle-class woman. And she does a lot of Amazon partnerships directly with that, but you don't even feel like it's an ad because you're just interested in the fashion that she's doing. Another one that I saw that was great was, it was a chef, I believe, and he was talking about different like kitchen tool pairings. And so he was talking about like what he uses. Both of those are very traditional examples. I'm also seeing some interesting stuff from different SaaS platforms who have been really just kind of like direct to the camera, talking about the benefits of their product. They were a little bit more, I don't want to use the word dry, but they were a little bit more informational than entertaining, but it was appropriate for what they were doing and they were adding value that way. But I haven't seen anybody, maybe like Duolingo, they do a really good job of just making people laugh and pulling them in. Like they are one of my best examples in UGC. Ryanair is another good one. But outside of those, like fashion is really like that e-commerce, because they've had more experience. I think they're doing it well.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen in education, I used to be like an education person. In education, I still haven't really seen that take off yet. SNHU has done some of it. I know University of Phoenix has done some of it as well. And I've seen that be really successful, but it's still a proving ground, I think, for higher ed.
Yeah. And I think e-commerce has kind of led the charge on this from the beginning. I'm just now starting to see some of the funnier, more authentic stuff come through on B2B. There's a very tight-knit group of creators in B2B SaaS right now that are really focused on the whole from lead gen to demand gen shift in that mindset. And I think it's Cognism is the brand. They started this new series that plays off the most interesting man in the world, the Dos Equis guy. But they have the worst marketer in the world. And the guy has like a big beard and he like sits back in his chair in like a mahogany office and talks about like all the things that you shouldn't be doing as a B2B marketer anymore. And it's like, and he is the worst marketer in the world. Like, hilarious, but it's getting their point across at the same time too, that, B2B marketing is fundamentally broken for a lot of companies right now. And there's a seismic shift in the way that people have to think about this stuff, but they put it out there in a way that is funny and easy to understand. And I think they've seen a lot of success with it.
Yeah, I love that. And I love to see that they're capitalizing on other trends too, just to be funny. I love to see that. I'm not when I'm on LinkedIn, I've kind of got this like aversion to LinkedIn right now because there's so much of that like guru style content where it's like, I have your answer and nobody else does. Like you need to talk to me. And UGC just doesn't really work with that. Like UGC is about building trust. It's not about being the only person who knows. It's about like creating that community of trust and sharing knowledge. So I'm interested to see if that trend takes root further than just like that core group that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's the opportunity right now for B2B brands is that's a way to cut through the noise because you're so right. Like it's very like top 10 things you need to do to increase sales leads right now. Slideshow. But the people that are getting the attention right now are doing funny, really authentic things with video. Like there's this other guy I follow. He works for an agency and he gives B2B marketing advice while he's like cutting fruit on camera. It's like cutting a new piece of fruit. It's just like silly shit like that it seems stupid, but it works.
It does. And when you're thinking about like designing those things, just try it because UGC is such a low cost and barrier to entry and see what happens. Like obviously be brand safe, but just throw it out there. Make sure you're accessible. Make sure you have captions turned on, that they're legible. Make sure, especially on TikTok, that you have captions. I can't emphasize enough. UGC or not, people scroll TikTok without audio. People scroll Facebook, they scroll LinkedIn without audio, but especially TikTok. So make sure you got your captions. Make sure you have a good caption on your video outside of just your closed captioning. What you say as your captions really matters. And then just make sure the content is quick, it's relevant, and it's entertaining and or educating.
Yep. And I think just the one last thing to speak to, and this what you said about LinkedIn and like all the guru content, it's all the same. It's all written. Reminded me of like, I think that, I want to get your take. I think UGC has been important and now it's going to become even more important because of AI, because now everybody can create all of this written content so fast. It's all average and it's just being flooded into platforms like LinkedIn because it's obviously not TikTok because it's all video based, but like it's overwhelming and it's all average. And I think that's just going to make it even more important for authenticity in real people in video to shine through, or else you're just going to get lost in all of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like the tsunami of bad content is what AI has created. And it can be such a tool to help people, but it can also really just absolutely maximize the amount of just okay things that people can make. So UGC kind of cuts through that. The video cuts through that. Use AI to make your captions. Like use AI to help you with scripting, use it to help you with your actual like caption for the video, but you can't fake that authentic user generated right now. Now, in the future, I'm sure that we'll see some AIs talking to us through the internet, but right now, to my knowledge, that's not something that's possible.
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting too, because I don't think it's just platforms like LinkedIn. I think it's going to be people's websites too. Like blog posts are going to become so commoditized because everyone can write a blog post super fast and SEO optimize it. And I think that it's going to be really important for people to make sure that the content they're putting on their website is actually valuable and you're not just putting content out there for SEO and content's sake.
One thing I always tell my students is before you put anything out there, before you even go to create it, think about and ask yourself like out loud, ask yourself, what value am I adding by creating this content?
Yep.
If you can't answer that question, you should not be making that content. If the answer is SEO or the answer is I need to have a post today or the answer is engagement, like that is not an answer. You're not actually adding value to your audience. Your audiences would much prefer to hear from you less frequently if it were better than more frequently if it were just okay. So if it's UGC and it takes you a little bit more time, that's fine. If it's writing and it takes a little bit more time, that's also fine. Use AI, but make sure you have something that's adding value, that's relevant, it builds trust, inspires change, and then you'll be successful. But it's just, don't just put it out there for the sake of putting it out there.
Totally. Totally agree with that. And I think it's even more important now with like AI is just flooding the internet with crap content.
Do you remember when Google said for a minute that they were going to penalize people for having AI written SEO content?
How I don't know how they're going to police
He
that.
said when it started, they were like, hey, we're going to penalize people for using it. And I was really worried because as someone who does SEO, I was like, oh, we have to all human, no AI at all.
Mhm.
And they've since walked that back. And it's all about like, trust and relevancy and authority and everything. But I'm interested to see how the consumer sees that, not just the actual algorithm itself.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we'll go down this rabbit hole for a second. Even just with like search in general, as marketers, I think we've kind of ruined search a little bit because we've rigged it to like, let's drive 2 pages for marketing's sake, where now with AI, as it gets better and better, you can ask it a question and get an answer. Like what you should be able to do with search, but like it's so difficult to get to an answer sometimes because it's so lost in some of the other things that we do and bad marketers do just to drive traffic. It's going to be really interesting to see how that evolves because I don't know about you, but there's nothing more frustrating for me when I try to go find a recipe and land on a page and got to scroll for 15 minutes before I actually get to the shit.
Yeah, they started adding that button that's like skip to recipe. And I'm like, thank God. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, with AI, you can ask it questions. You can do a lot of things. You got to make sure it's right because we talked about it being, a pathological liar. It makes a lot of things up.
Yeah.
So as long as you make sure that you're checking your sources and that it's correct, it's a really great thing to use. And when you're thinking about your content strategies, pull it back to UGC, use AI to help you make ideas for your content strategy. Fact check it, make sure it's great, but at the end of the day, like it can be like an idea engine for you, not just a writer or a fact checker.
Totally. It helps you get the better ideas faster. Don't use an output from AI or you're inherently going to use an average output because that's all it can do.
Correct.
Awesome. Well, Jenna, hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. This was great. Getting to dive into a little bit what you do outside of Level with your research and stuff. So thank you for that. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. If you're thinking about your content strategy, how you want to start leveraging video and specifically UGC more, reach out to us. Jenna and myself and anyone at the agency would be happy to jump on a call with you just to talk through how you're thinking about using it, how you're using it now, and providing some advice and some strategy there. So until next time, connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube. We're always sharing awesome content around how to grow your business faster and smarter through performance marketing. And thanks again, Jenna. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.